Australia, 2012. Dylan Wheeler is 16 years old, a high school student sitting in his bedroom in Perth at 2 a.m. with his computer screen glowing in the darkness. He's staring at something that shouldn't exist, files on his screen that belong to Microsoft, the complete technical blueprints for the next Xbox console codenamed Durango, years before its official release. He didn't break any sophisticated encryption or write complex malware. Just tried a password he found in a data breach, admin 060606, and it worked. For the next 3 years, Dylan and a small group of teenage hackers will infiltrate Microsoft, Epic Games, Valve, Activision, and almost 25 major tech companies, stealing unreleased games worth millions, leaking Gears of War 3 months before launch, building a working Xbox prototype in someone's bedroom, and even hacking into US military flight simulators while the FBI builds a case against them. How did a group of teenagers hack the biggest tech companies on Earth? And why did they keep going even after the FBI started hunting them? Hit subscribe because this story ends with arrests, betrayal, and one hacker who's still on the run. Let's start with the hack that started it all and turned these gamers into criminals. 2011. Dylan gets a message from an online friend named GameFreak1727 containing a list of usernames, emails, and passwords, all stolen from a forum run by Epic Games, the company behind Unreal Tournament and Gears of War. Dylan checks the list and finds login credentials for an IT employee at Epic Games, then wonders if that person uses the same password on other sites. He tries logging into the employee's Gmail account and it works, so he searches through the inbox and finds another password, admin 060606. He tries it on Epic's internal network and gets in, then immediately messages his hacking buddy David Pecora, who lives in Ontario, Canada, and goes by the online name Xenon. David is instantly hooked because what if the servers are hosting unreleased games? He knows it's illegal, so he sets himself some limits. No looking at customer data, no credit card information, just games. David had been in the Xbox hacking scene since 2008 when he bought several Xbox 360 development kits that someone found at a recycling yard after Microsoft tried to destroy them. These dev kits gave him access to Partner.net, a closed Microsoft platform where game developers upload test versions of their games. So suddenly, David could play unreleased games months before launch. He'd spend entire nights browsing Partner.net, posting screenshots of unreleased games in forums, and making a name for himself in the hacking community. But what Dylan just handed him was something much bigger than screenshots. This was full access to Epic Games' internal network. David and Dylan spend months searching through Epic's servers looking for anything interesting, and eventually they find something massive. An early build of Gears of War 3 complete with source code. They can't believe it because they're about to play one of the most anticipated games of the year months before anyone else. They message their friend Sanad Khandu, a 24-year-old tech enthusiast from New Jersey who goes by the name Sonic, to let him in on the discovery. Sanad has a hacked modem that hides his IP address so he can download without getting caught. So he logs into Epic's network and starts downloading hundreds of gigabytes of data, staying up all night until it completes because he's too excited to sleep. When it finishes, he burns the data onto 8 Blu-rays and mails them to David with wedding videos, written on the package to avoid suspicion. David receives the package and tests the game. The build is still raw with missing textures and not really playable yet, but it's real. He sends copies to the others in their group, including a guy named Justin May from Delaware, who goes by MTW. Just days later, the game appears online as a public download, and the leak makes international headlines. Epic Games confirms the leak and warns people that downloading it might damage their systems. The group is panicking because they're still inside Epic's network when they find an email showing that Epic called the FBI and a federal investigation has begun. David freaks out and asks Justin to help him encrypt his hard drives while Sanad decides to lay low, but Dylan doesn't care about the FBI at all and keeps logging into the servers while federal agents are actively scanning them, looking for hackers. His recklessness actually pays off because he finds a USB drive connected to the network with a list of all Epic's important access credentials. which means Dylan now has complete access to Epic's entire network. From that point on, he logs in every single day, roaming around employee computers and tapping into their webcams so he can watch them in real time from Australia while they move around the office and sit in meetings. But Dylan doesn't stop at Epic Games. He starts exploiting human errors everywhere by searching data breaches for login credentials and trying them on other company sites. Eventually, he hacks into networks at Microsoft, EA, Bungie, Blizzard, Valve, and Activision. David and Sanad find out what Dylan is doing, and they can't resist jumping back in, so one by one, they infiltrate the biggest tech companies on the planet, downloading more and more unreleased games and making money by selling them. It's like a fever dream they can't wake up from. The group keeps expanding with 2 new members joining, Austin Alcala, a 16-year-old high school student from Indiana who's tall, shy, and reserved with the online name A Monkey, and Nathan LaRue, Nars, an 18-year-old from Maryland whose dad's a diesel mechanic and whose mom homeschools him while he dreams of becoming a game developer with the online name AnimeFR3AK. The group now hacks AMD, Intel, Disney, Warner Brothers, and Google, infiltrating almost 25 major corporations, all of them targeted by a group of teenagers operating from their bedrooms. Then comes the moment that takes them from hacking game companies to something far more dangerous. Late summer 2012, Austin and Nathan are poking around servers belonging to Zombie Studios, a developer known for military war games, when they discover a connection leading straight to a US military server. The drives are hosting a new game Zombie Studios is working on called AH-64D Apache Simulator, a flight training program commissioned by the US Department of Defense. They hesitate because this is bigger than anything they found and much more dangerous. But curiosity wins, and they download the military simulator. The group is at its peak now, after being active for over 2 years and going places nobody else could reach. They know everything they've done could land them in prison, but they can't stop. So they joke about what they'd call their gang if they all ended up in prison together and decide Xbox Underground sounds pretty badass, laughing about it even though they won't be laughing much longer. Now here's where everything accelerates toward their downfall with the Xbox prototype that exposed them all, August 2012. David and Dylan are deep inside Microsoft's servers when they find a heavily protected folder that only a few developers have access to. They download it and find technical documents, pictures of circuit boards and casings, and source code. Then piece it together and realize these are the complete plans for the upcoming Xbox console codenamed Durango that will later be called Xbox One. They debate what to do because they could sell the plans or they could build the console themselves since all the parts seem available on the market. They order everything online and ship it to Nathan's house where he volunteers to assemble it, and somehow it works. They've actually built a working prototype of the new Xbox before it's officially released, though they have no games to test it, so they decide to sell it instead. They find a buyer in the hacking scene willing to pay $5,000. The buyer transfers the money, and the group discusses who should ship the console. Justin volunteers and drives from Delaware to Maryland on a 2-hour trip to pick up the console at Nathan's place. But the package never arrives, and the buyer never receives it. They get nervous, wondering if the FBI intercepted it, and then Dylan decides to upload pictures of their prototype online without telling anyone just to see what happens. The Xbox prototype is now seemingly up for auction on eBay, and the auction goes viral immediately with bids reaching over $20,000, but the sale doesn't go through because Microsoft files a copyright claim. Dylan, who set up the auction under his online name SuperDay, starts giving online interviews about the whole thing, which makes Sanath and David absolutely furious because after leaving tracks everywhere online, this attention is the last thing they need. David cuts all ties with Dylan completely. Microsoft's investigation picks up speed, and just weeks after the auction, FBI raids Nathan's house and arrests him. Sanad tries distancing himself from the group, but his house gets raided too. So he sends a copy of the search warrant to others, including Dylan, who then posts the names of the FBI agents online and publicly threatens to send hitmen after them, a statement he later regrets deeply. February 2013, Australian authorities arrest Dylan Wheeler, and the arrests keep coming. But there's one more insane twist before they catch David. David is at a concert when Austin calls and tells him about an 18-year-old hacker named Armin, who claims he has physical access to Microsoft's campus and offers a deal where he'll sneak in and steal a real Durango prototype in exchange for Microsoft server credentials and a few $1,000s. David thinks Armin is crazy, but curiosity wins again and he agrees. At 9 p.m., Armin drives to Microsoft's campus wearing a company logo sweater with a big backpack after cloning an employee's access card. And he gets in easily because the campus is enormous, but he knows his way around after sneaking into buildings for almost a year while dreaming of working there, since he's a huge Microsoft fan who even applied for a job but hasn't heard back yet. Armin enters an office building feeling nervous because he's been there many times, but never to steal. Eventually, he finds what he's looking for on the 3rd floor, and with his hands shaking, he stuffs 3 Xbox prototypes into his backpack, sneaks out, drives home, and sends 2 consoles to David and Austin while keeping one for himself. Just a week later, Armin gets a call from Microsoft saying they reviewed his application and he got the job. His dream just came true, but only weeks later, Armin loses the job because surveillance cameras caught him stealing, and he's arrested. January 2014, FBI agents arrest Austin at his house, and then in March 2014, David Pecora gets arrested at the US-Canada border while driving to Delaware to visit Justin and pick up a car part. The border officer checks his passport and sees the name Xenon pop up on his screen. So he asks what it means, and David flinches as 2 officers approach with weapons drawn and tell him to step out. He's arrested and realizes he walked right into a trap. David, Sanad, Austin, and Nathan stand trial together in the US, while Dylan faces separate charges in Australia. All of them accused of identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy to steal millions in intellectual property. The indictment is extremely detailed because the FBI must have been building the case for years with chat logs, transcripts of personal conversations dating back to 2011, and prosecutors even playing audio recordings that were secretly made during their hacking sessions. But the indictment keeps repeatedly mentioning Person A, who provided most of the evidence to the FBI, helped David encrypt his hard drive, he sold unreleased games to someone named Xbox Dev Guy, delivered the self-made Xbox prototype to federal agents, and lives in Wilmington, Delaware. Everyone suddenly realizes it's Justin. He was the FBI informant the entire time after cutting a deal when he got caught trying to steal a game at a gaming convention years earlier, which is how he got away with all his other scams. The guys in the US all plead guilty and cope differently with their convictions. David is cooperative and helps investigators understand how they bypassed billion-dollar security systems, which impresses the officers so much that after serving 18 months in prison and getting released, he finishes college and starts working for cybersecurity firms. Austin gets 3 years probation and doesn't serve a single day in jail because he helps the FBI with another fraud case involving fake FIFA coins, then later becomes head of cybersecurity at a social media startup. Sanad serves the same sentence as David with 18 months, but when he gets out, the following years are brutal because he works at a vape store and goes to college, while his probation officer bans him from using computers and constantly harasses him. Sanad becomes isolated and slips into depression, turning to drugs, and his probation officer sees this as a violation, so a judge sentences him to another 9 months. In 2019, Sanad's probation finally ends, and for the first time in years, he's allowed to use a computer. Nathan is terrified of prison because he's one of the youngest in the group, a gentle person who was the least involved in the hacks, so he gets bail until the verdict with an ankle monitor and is allowed to stay with his parents. But the thought of prison eats him up, and one day he cuts off the ankle monitor and tries to flee by paying a friend to drive him to the Canadian border. Police catch him at the checkpoint, and Nathan panics, jumping out of the car and running across the bridge toward the border. But the cops catch him, and he's desperate enough to consider jumping off the bridge. He pulls out a knife and injures himself until he collapses, then survives and gets taken straight to jail where he serves a 2-year sentence. Shortly before his release, Nathan comes out as transgender and now goes by Holly. And the time in prison must have been awful. because just a year after getting released, Holly takes their own life. In Australia, Dylan is the only one who pleads not guilty, which leads to court cases dragging on for over 3 years until he's ordered to surrender his passport. Instead, he heads straight to the airport and flies to the Czech Republic using his Czech citizenship through his mother. And shortly after Dylan escapes, his mother gets sentenced to 18 months in prison for helping him, even though Dylan claims she neither drove him to the airport nor sent him money. Dylan moves to the UK, where he establishes a cybersecurity firm and gives talks on security topics. But in March 2020, he shuts down his company, and there's been no trace of him since. He's still out there somewhere, still free. In 2017, when almost all members of Xbox Underground have served their sentences, police finally arrest Justin May, the informant who betrayed them all. Authorities seize a brand new BMW and nearly $440,000 in cash from his possession. And in 2021, he's convicted of fraud, fencing, tax evasion, and money laundering, getting sentenced to almost 8 years in prison and fined $4 million. The person who betrayed everyone ended up getting the longest sentence of all. These teenagers hacked the biggest tech companies on Earth just because they loved video games and couldn't resist the thrill. Subscribe for more stories that sound too crazy to be real.